Peter the Great and Dutch banking rate. Not baking, banking rate. Baking doesn't make any sense. They were bankers. They were one of the most powerful bankers in the world, but baking, no, no, not so much. Today is, oh, I'm sorry. Uh, I am, as always, your host, Christopher Paul Dugdale, MEDMA. We are Duncanville High School in these United States, and today is October 22nd, 2020. And on this date in history, in 1764, Parliament enacted the Stamp Act, getting the colonies to work together, which also led to independence. So, happy Stamp Act. You know, whenever you get your papers notarized, it's basically the Stamp Act in the United States. We've been tricked. Scared face. So now we're going to go ahead and continue on with Russians and what's going on in Russia. And if you got me behind closed doors and told me to define what it really meant to be Russian, I would say it would revolve around two things. One would be vodka, and two would be the Orthodox Church. The Russian Orthodox Church was extremely powerful until communism in the 19 teens, and really into the 1920s before it really established itself. Okay, I would also call, if you needed more things, I would say poverty and very cold weather are all things that define what it means to be Russian. Okay, Russian Patriarch Nikon, he starts reforms in the Bible and worship, which led to the threat of the old believers. So this is kind of a rise of the conservatives and the liberals in Russia. Kind of like the old lights and the new lights, which are taking place about the same time. Well, actually about 100 years later in the Americas. So let's move into Russia. Russian the Great. Yeah, Russian the Great, that makes sense. Let's talk about the man, the myth, the giant, and literally a giant. And this is 7 foot tall Peter the Great. Okay? He really made the world stand and take notice of Russia. Okay? He believes in the divine right of kings, so this is a continue of absolutism. Europe really begins to recognize Russia following this, and he tries to modernize Russia. He conscripts a large, massive army following the lead of Gustavus Adolphus and Louis XIV and XIII. So he makes the first Russian navy, which will later on be modernized by Catherine the Great, a distant relative of his who becomes a ruler shortly after he's in power. He divides Russia into provinces so that they can rule it. So again, this is following kind of the lead of Louis XIV. He starts joint stock companies to start industry, and takes advantage of all the poor people in the church to make this to get this done. Okay. Well, anyway, so let me go ahead and explain kind of where he got his ideas. He goes and travels to Europe, and he tries to do it incognito. You know, although tales of the 7 foot Russian leader are already going around, you know, the fact that he's going around with a massive entourage of technical advisors, it looks like he's definitely a king. Okay? He visits shipyards, manufacturers, and colleges, and he goes and he tries to get educated. But one of the things he does is he looks at what it looks like to be a modern European, and he goes back and tries to make people in Russia look like people in Europe. Okay? And his big trip to go around Europe and get ideas for modernizing Russia is cut short whenever there is a revolution of the Streltsy. You know, the nobility, this powerful class. So Peter returns and he comes back on the rampage, and he himself is at the center of this. And he is a massive person in himself. And so he tortures and kills many rebels personally. Their bodies were hung on the city walls so that everyone could see what happened to anyone who promoted. And he tried to force changes by getting rid of veils from women, long beards, and long coats. In fact, he would carry around a knife, and if he saw you with a long beard, he'd go up and cut off your beard personally with his knife, and he'd cut your coat off to make it short, so you look more European. You know, he did all these things personally himself. So he's not really looking for someone else to do this. He's personally doing this himself, and he also starts charging a tax for anyone who breaks any of these rules, who's wearing, veils, who's got their long beards and their long coats. Okay, he required everyone of the landowning class, so all of the nobility, to work in state service, and he creates a merit system called the Table of Ranks, and you could work your way up higher into the government, based on actual contributions that you had. Okay, tries to get rid of feudal self-government and makes the nation into 10 governing units. Okay, he tried to force men and women to talk together and play cards together and dance together by royal decree. And he also wanted to make sure that women could marry people on their own free will. Now, religiously, Peter's also trying to make changes in the religion. So he creates a Holy Synod of bishops. And this is to control the Russian Orthodox Church under the state. He wants some layman or someone that's not within the church, that kind of works for the state, to represent the interest of the Tsar, of Peter himself, and call this person a procurator. So in the Great Northern War, Peter's trying to get a warm water port in the Baltic Sea. And this has been an ongoing problem for Russia for all of their existence, and it's one that continues to be a problem even today. Now, initially, this is lost with Poland and Polish help. What did I just say? With helps from Denmark and Poland, even though the Swedes, were outnumbered. Okay? So this happened in the Battle of Narva, and they drew into the brutal Russian winter. Okay? And because Sweden hadn't really fought on these grounds before, Russia's going to end up getting a Baltic port, and this is where Peter's going to build the city of St. Petersburg. So basically, if you get involved in a war with Russia, you don't want to do it during the Russian winter. If you want to start in the Russian winter, that's fine, but you need to have gained your province and taken control of everything before the winter hits, because no one has ever beaten the Russian winter. And that probably includes the Russians. So in Denmark, Christian IV, we talked about him during the 30 Years' War. Okay, he tried to expand the country, but the monarchy in Denmark is not very powerful, and it's so much like the monarchy in Poland, because they're both really controlled by the people below them. And being in an elected position, they didn't have all the power to do the things that they needed to build and maintain their positions. Okay, and Denmark's going to lose they're going to lose really important battles in the 30 Years' War and the Great Northern War. And eventually, a bloodless revolution is going to bring back a hereditary monarchy. And this is going to be led by Christian IV, Christian V, Christian IV's son. I don't know why it's so hard. I just have two Christians here, but man, complicates things. Okay, so it reigned over a central administration led by nobility. I'm moving on because I've already talked myself into a corner. Okay, so back to Sweden and the great Gustavus Adolphus. Okay, he creates the first estate, and they put nobility into bureaucratic positions, and they have the first standing army of conscripts. So the nobility there, they get a job outside of just being wealthy, and they have jobs where their job becomes to take care of the people. And really, Sweden stays out of all the major wars through World War One and World War Two, and a lot of the crap that happens during the 18th and 19th centuries. I mean, this is pretty unique for them to get involved, and when they do, they're successful. Okay, so we're moving on from Gustavus, and you have Charles XI, who tries to make them an absolute monarchy. Okay, he takes control of Sweden's parliament, or Riksdag. Okay, which sounds a lot like the Reichstag. So there are a few similarities between Swedish and German. Okay, at least in terms of their parliament. He also improves the army and navy. He is led by, or he's not led by, he's followed by sweet Moses. I need a vacation, mainly from the sentence. So he's followed by Charles the 12th. He's a brilliant general, okay, and he wins a lot of land in the Great Northern War, okay. So that's really his biggest contribution. You know, Sweden's not really quite as exciting and sexy as, you know, what I may have said earlier. Okay, and so back to Poland. Now, I've talked about how Poland kind of gets slapped around because the Sejm, uh, or the Salsa, are Polish nobles, and they choose the king or Sejm of Poland. It's an elected position, and they really limit their power. Okay, and any noble could block whatever the king or Sejm wanted to do with what was called the Liberum Veto, and so it's just basically a way of them blocking whatever the Sejm wanted to do in Poland. So really, there's no real power in Poland, and as a result of the lack of power in Poland, you have Poland's partition, which is over a 23-year period that Russia, Prussia, and Austria are going to take away Poland's land just systematically. And just over this short period of time, Prussia is going to gain really large parts of Poland, along with Russia and along with Austria. So this is what happens whenever you make sure that no one has any power. Then the idea is that no one can stop you from taking apart Poland. But don't worry, Poland's going to come back, and they're going to get torn apart again. It's kind of what Poland's all about. So let's talk about the Netherlands, or this great Dutch commercial republic. So they have a population of about 1 million people, and one of the first incredible things that they do is the effective use of dams and dikes. This is able to make it so that a lot more of the land in Holland is much more useful for farming and for planting, which I guess are the same thing. They use these polders for diverting water, and then they move themselves into a position in banking to where, according to a lot of Christian rules, you weren't allowed to charge interest, and they found a way to just get past that and go, no, that's fine. We'll go ahead and charge interest when people borrow money. So they become, in a short period of time, the financial center of Europe. They have the Bank of Amsterdam and Stock Exchange. So people that were trying to trade for, for different corporations could do that through Amsterdam, and not only that, they controlled the banking, and they built a very large and powerful navy over a short period of time, and take control of a lot of the trade empire of Portugal. They had religious toleration, and so everyone who gets kicked out of other countries, if you had any skills, you were welcomed to the Netherlands. So this would be the French Huguenots, this would be Jews and Spanish Moors from Spain, and other Protestants. So you have business connections from all around Europe, so this promotes new trade. You had craftsmanship brought in. So all of this was done intentionally to try and improve this new empire that was coming up, this financial center of Europe. So, uh, a stadtholder led one of the 7 provinces and maintained the army in order. You had these flutes or flyboats that controlled trade. William of Orange is going to become the first stadtholder to lead the country. This is the same William of Orange who will take over Great Britain during the Glorious Revolution. Sorry about a spoiler. Uh, the biggest problem is whenever he dies, he doesn't have an heir. But this really creates a royal line within the Netherlands. So, one of these traditions that carry on and help it build itself into the empire that it will become. Now, moving in from here into the realm of art. So, the Dutch painters of the time, they have a major preoccupation with light and shadow. Some of the, like Jan Vermeer at the bottom, he does a lot of scenes of the same room and the same furniture, but at different types of day to emphasize the shadows. A lot of still lives, domestic scenes, and group portraits. Remember, this is still a time whenever people are really creating and trying to figure out how to do different things in art. We talked about the inclusion of the third dimension during the Renaissance, and so this is much more use of shadow. A lot of things that are taught in art schools today, but whenever you don't have any type of system or nothing in place, then it's not the same putting these things together. You have Frans Hals. He made very lively portraits. Okay. Judith Leyster. Okay, she's the first female member of the Painting Guild of St. Luc and in Haarlem. Haarlem is in Amsterdam, and she painted musicians, women sewing, and she in a painting called Self-Portrait, she paints a picture of her painting a picture of a different picture. I mean, I guess it would probably have been more fascinating had she painted a picture of herself painting a picture of herself. That's very meta painting. For anyone who's a big fan of meta, well, here is your moment to shine and become excited. And I guess it's over now. I'm sorry. Sorry to rob you of this moment. Okay, Rembrandt. Okay, who most people know as Rembrandt, but he is Rembrandt van Rijn. Okay, he was the greatest painter of the Dutch Golden Age. He does all types of portraits and biblical illustrations. Okay, if you look on the right-hand side, you will see the Night Watch. And the Night Watch shows a militia preparing for a parade in Amsterdam. Okay, so people would welcome through the streets and people would praise what they had done. So, kind of a moment of glory that he's trying to capture. Although on the left-hand side, what it looks like is they're trying to vote on who's going to be the next Quaker Oat man. I'm hoping it's a guy on the box. Although the Quakers don't have anything to do with them per se. You do have a group of people from the Netherlands who eventually would convert. By the way, this is before the Dutch really even exist, whenever Rembrandt was alive. So a group of Dutch people that settle in Pennsylvania will later on convert and become Quakers, and that's where you have the term Pennsylvania Dutch, which really turned into the Amish who don't embrace technology. A bunch of things that you don't need to know about Rembrandt that aren't about Rembrandt, just talked about because of all these people here looking like they're fighting to get on an oatmeal box. Now, the Ottoman Empire, this is the next group that we need to address right now. This is created in 1453, and by the way, created is probably the wrong term, because they existed before then. That's just when they consolidated their power by conquering the Byzantine Empire. Okay, the minute they conquer them, the Ottoman Empire grows from a small region to a much larger region.
that controls the important trade city of Constantinople, which was renamed Istanbul. And there's a fear that the Ottoman Empire will expand and take over all of Europe. So, this fear of a Muslim expansion. When the Ottoman Empire does invade in 1529, they're stopped by Charles V in right outside of Vienna in Austria. Okay, it's eventually stopped by the last and probably first great Polish king, Jan Sobieski. Okay, they have a hard time really taking advantage of their position because of a few things. Number one, you have very corrupt sultans that ruled the Ottoman Empire. So instead of putting their money into, modernizing their army or maintaining their positions, well, instead they're just feeding them their faces and their families with wealth. You have Janissaries, okay, elite fighters who failed to adapt to technology or strategic changes. The Janissaries were soldiers that were not allowed to ever get married because the fear was if you had the attachment of a family that you wouldn't be able to really do the job that you needed to do. Okay, you also have local rule keeping out of touch with far-flung provinces. So part of maintaining a large empire is finding a way to keep control of what's going on, defending it, and making sure that if anything's happening, you can get to it quickly enough. And they overextended themselves. So these are some of the problems that they're facing. And this will lead us to the end of today. So I hope everyone's having a great day. We made it through yet another day, and I will see you all soon. So have a great night, and I'll see you on the other side. Da 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 da.